All right. Good enough. The Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 4 Talmidim, and with this he built up the whole Jewish nation. Soldat kommt, okay. Okay, I'll stop, yeah. Okay.
To be similar to the 4 Talmidim.
You know, the Pasha of the week is that's what we talk about, based on the Pasha of the week. And it's 2 Pashiyos, Achrey, and Kdoshim. Okay. And both of these Pashiyos speak about the Jewish people in very lofty ways. In Kdoshim it says, Hashem says to Moshe to tell Yidden, you should be holy because I am holy. There are similar expressions in Pashas Achrey. And Pashas Achrey begins with the Avodah of Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day, and the Kohen Gadol enters the Kiddush HaKdoshim. Achrey Mois also reminds us of the episode with Beit Aaron's 2 sons, that they were so overtaken with holiness that they expired. So I thought maybe it would be an opportune time to discuss this concept of holiness. What does it mean? And how does it apply to us? How does the Torah say to us, you should be holy? We are mere mortals. I mean, what do you mean we're going to be holy? How does this work? How does it apply to us? And the Torah says, Kdoshim tihu, you should be holy, ki kodesh ani Hashem Elokeichem, because I am holy, and your God is holy, therefore you should be holy. God is holy, but we are not holy. We are not the same. And yet the Torah says, you could be holy because God is holy. To understand this, we have to define a very important principle. How we view our lives, how we view the world, versus, in comparison, in contrast, to the way, what you could call, what the world views itself, and how the outside world, the non-Jewish world, views itself. The Gemara says, Chochmo yesh b'goyim ta'ami, which means if someone testifies and says there is wisdom amongst the goyim, amongst the Gentiles, ta'ami, you can accept it, you can believe it. There is wisdom amongst the Gentiles. Torah yesh bagoyim. Somebody says that there is Torah bagoyim. Al ta'amin. That you must not believe, because that's not possible. It doesn't exist. And what is the difference between Torah and Chokhmah? Torah is also Chokhmah. In essence, the principal difference is in some way it comes out subtle, but if you think about it, you realize that it's very, very clear and very strong. The world is a great, beautiful world. With enormous variety, almost unlimited variety, unlimited beauty, unlimited greatness. And Chokhmah, human wisdom, dictates that one must deal with it with respect. You must not be destructive. You must be constructive. You must utilize all the wonderful things that exist in the world, because they're all beautiful and positive things. Some of the things that exist in the world, we don't even understand how they all work. Even to this day. There's a saying from the Baal Shem Tov. It's quoted actually in the Hayom Yom at some point, I don't remember where. That Hashem had imbued into the earth such profound supernatural koichos, qualities, forces, that all the scientists, all the scholars of nature will never fathom, will never get to fully understand what the earth contains. It's to be noted that the Baal Shem Tov said this some 300 years ago. And in our world, just about 150 years ago, in the 1800s, the office in Washington, the office of the patent office, I think I mentioned it recently. You know what the patent office is? Patent. When somebody invents something, he has to register his invention so that nobody else can steal his invention. So the patent office recommended to the government that it can close the office, because everything that could be invented has already been invented. And therefore there is no need to run an office. It costs money for the government to run an office, a patent office. That's going back in the 1800s. Can you imagine what happened since then? So the world cannot even fathom what capabilities there are in the world. We have electricity that nobody understands what it is. We have radio waves, nobody understands what that is. We just know it works. So there is wisdom in the world that we know how to utilize the natural forces in the world, and we know that this has to be respected, that these are valuable things. But nobody understands what it is in the sense that it's viewed to be part of the world. How come a world like this has this kind of hidden forces? We thought that this world is all on the surface, can all be accounted for, logically explained. That's what the world is. It's a physical world and consists of physical structures. All of a sudden we find in the world things that way beyond our understanding. So this remains, so to speak, a world mystery. And no matter what we discover in the world, as far as the universal wisdom is concerned, as far as the worldly wisdom is concerned, no matter what we discover, it is all put into one basket: nature. Somehow nature develops in all kinds of different ways. In the real natural thought process, where they came up with the theory, with the idea that everything in the world has developed, so to speak, from a lower level to another level, so that all species, all living species have developed from a lower level of life, and it's called evolution, into a higher level of life through some kind of a process, natural process. So just as we don't understand electricity and we don't understand radio, when they came to understand the human being, they said the same thing. They said the human being has developed somehow from an ape. But how, we don't understand. It's a fluke. We don't understand. It's a mistake of nature. How can anybody say a mistake of nature if you believe in natural process? Since that you cannot perceive anything beyond nature. Everything you perceive only thing within the context of nature. So when you see something that you cannot naturally explain, it remains a fluke, a mistake. This is the way the universal world, and the people outside of Yiddishkeit look at the world. They can discover all kinds of miraculous things, and it all remains, so to speak, enhancing the world itself. No understanding, no comprehension as to what it represents. Yidden, the Jewish view, this is the Inyam HaTorah Yesh Bagoyim Al Ta'am. What is the Jewish view? That everything in the world, from the smallest, the most insignificant, the most simple, to the highest and the most complex and the most mysterious and the greatest and most beautiful, all of it is actually representative of a godly presence. Everything in the world represents a godly quality. And it exists only because there is godliness, a godly spirit in the world that keeps it up. It doesn't stand on natural forces, on natural bases. It is being held up by a godly spirit. This is the meaning when the Torah says, we spoke about this many times, Reishis Bora Elikim Hashemayim v'Ha'aretz. Everyone knows the translation of these words. What it means in terms of practical thought is that what is the beginning of everything? If you want to approach to know anything and to understand anything, Bereshis, the very beginning of all research, of all thought, is that you have to remember that Bora Elikim Hashemayim v'Ha'aretz, that it is a godly creation. If you recognize that it is a godly creation, then your mind opens up and you're able to understand what you're looking at. And it begins to reveal to you qualities and meanings and purposes that you would never, ever be able to identify otherwise. And thus, when we come to a human being, that which the naturalists say it's a fluke of nature, it's kind of some kind of an oddity in the world, comes the Torah and says, wait a second, what kind of oddity in the world? God has created him to rule the world. Yes, in fact, he is higher than the world. He's supposed to rule the world. He owns the world. The whole world is made for him. He's really not part of the world at all. You're right. He has to rule the world. He has to capture the world. As we spoke many times, he has to humanize the world. He has to transform the world into a godly world. And everything in the world was made to serve him and to enhance and make possible his success. Because in fact, he, this human being, represents the godly presence in the world at a much higher level than anything else. It represents really the godly spirit, the godly purpose. It gives the world a purpose. I mentioned to you in the past the experience that I had. Once, years back, I took a family, the grandchildren, we took to a museum of natural history. You know what that is, right? Museum of Natural History. And they held a window displays of all kinds of ancient animals, prehistoric animals. They go up from one window to another, and they show that, in a natural setting, the ugliest, low-level creatures, showing how they devour one another, how they fight with one another, and all kinds of different things. And they describe these animals. They were, they're roaming the earth at such and such a time in history, until the humans came, and the humans took over their land, took over their habitat. And then you go to the next window, and again, you see a similar thing. These roamed this part of the world, and they were living a life of bliss, eating each other up, until the humans came. Go to another window, again, the humans are some kind of a species, some kind of a horrifying presence that is the curse of the world, that somehow is eliminating all of these wonderful creatures. And you walk from window to window, and I was stunned not to be embarrassed to say things like this. Until the humans came. I was scratching to meet this wise man who made this inscription and ask him, tell me one simple thing. What would the world be like? What would the world be worth without the human being? No human being in the world. What's the world stand for? Zero. Has no value whatsoever. It's nothing. But without the sense of Bereshis Borei Elokim, that God created the world, without the sense of purpose, without the sense of what the human being stands for, this is how the mind works. It's like the human being, a horrible creature. It takes over the land of these snakes and of these scorpions. How dare you? The Torah writes, when Adam Rishon was created, it says, Pru be fruitful and multiply, umilo is oris v'chivshu, and fill the earth and capture it. It is part of God's mission to human beings. Capture the world. Humanize the world. Develop it. Because the world is made for you. It has to be a meaningful world. It's God's world. Wherever you go in the world, you have to be able to see there's purpose, there's meaning to it. This is the principle of the Torah view. Torah yesh bagoyim altam. This you cannot come up on your own. On your own, you come back and you say the humans are terrible. They take over the land of these prehistoric animals who don't no purpose, no nothing. But the Torah gave us, it's not just a way of life. Tell us right from wrong. Torah uplifts the human being, plucks him out from the natural world, and gives him a life, an existence, a presence that is really independent of nature, above the natural world. How can you be above natural world? You have to stand on the ground. What's going to support you? It is your awareness and your recognition of the godly presence in the world. This is what sustains you. This is what's holding you up. This is what defines to you what you see in the world. When you see beauty in the world, you don't see worldly beauty. You see a godly purpose in the world. You see beauty in the world, you see that the world has been created for some purpose, to represent something. We mentioned, the Gemara says, a very simple thing, a really mind-boggling thing, that which means that a child, an infant, does not have developed the wisdom to recognize father and mother until he tastes dogon. He tastes grain food, wheat. Eat him tam dogon. This tam dogon, this taste of dogon, produce strikes the human mind, and he recognizes a new perspective, new wisdom perspective, and reveals itself. And he begins to understand things that are bigger than world. Father and mother seem to be a very simple thing, right? Why should a child know father and mother? The animals also are drawn to their mother. What's so wise about knowing father and mother, calling father and mother? And we say that this is something which is, again, uniquely human. This is a human wisdom. The principle of knowing father and mother and the wisdom involved in this superficially, every human being is a self-sustained, is an independent entity. He eats for himself, he drinks for himself, he sleeps for himself, he works. He's completely independent. His mind works independently of everybody else. So yeah, he was born here with his father and his mother, but that's history. That's history. The fact is that he is an independent entity, and he goes on. But the human wisdom is such that it demands that he know, just as human wisdom implores him to find out what is the world about, where did the world come from, who created the world, so too that his wisdom implore him to know, how do I come here? No matter what it is. But in order for a human being to feel, to know how he belongs in this world, he has to know, how did I get here? This is a fundamental fundamental sense that a human being has, and it's a profound wisdom, because the human mind, the human intellect, it demands to know the full reality of things, and therefore he has to know, how do I come here? And this sense of this wisdom, how do I come here, is a sense of wisdom. This intellect develops as a result of eating produce, the Gemara says. How that happens is a separate thing. I'm not going into this. My point is that everything in the world, everything that we encounter, has a profound effect on the human being. And this all has a tremendous purpose in the overall greatness of the world, and particularly for the service of the human being. How does this happen? Because it is all God's creation, and God created the whole world for the human being, to enable him to develop and accomplish the purpose that God wants for him to accomplish. Thus, this gives us a sense of an understanding. When the Torah says, Kdoshim tiyu, right in the beginning, Kdoshim tiyu, you will learn this parsha tomorrow in Mitzvah. You should be holy, because I, your God, am holy. And we asked in the beginning, how is that, what's the bridge? How is that logical? How does it follow? Because God is holy, therefore I'm holy. And the answer is that the Torah is telling us that we have been given this ability. We have been raised to that level of true presence, that we really are capable, not only capable of what we are enjoying, we are required to live in the world that God created. Recognizing that whatever that it is God's handiwork, it's not just the world. And it is God's presence in the world that gives it its richness and its beauty and its purpose. And this is what the Torah says. It's an interesting thing. It says, Kdoshim tiyu, you should be holy, ki kodesh oni, because I'm holy. And what's the next pasuk? The next pasuk after that is, Ish ima v'yoviv tiro, you should fear your mother and your father. V'shabsoiset ishmoir, you should keep my Shabbos. There seems to be kind of interrelated instructions. What is the similarity? You start from being holy, then you go to, you should fear your father and your mother and your father. It seems to be a perfectly natural thing. And then you go back to keeping the Shabbos, which is again a different world. But this is what the Torah is telling us. You should fear your father and your mother. Why? Because you are holy. Not because you fear your father, because it's part of natural setup. Because it is appropriate, so to speak, in the worldly context. But because you are holy, and your father and your mother are those two people who, one way or another, provided for your ability to recognize this holiness and to do mitzvahs, brought you into the world. And therefore you have to recognize how you got into this world. What gave you the opportunity to do all the things that you were able to do. In other words, it is all part of the original statement, you should be holy. And the proof of it is that, of course, immediately after that it says, Shabsoiset Tishmeru, you should keep my Shabbos. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is going back. Shabbos is essentially testimonial on a weekly basis that we remind ourselves that this is a godly creation. This is what Shabbos is. In the world, this is the oddest thing. You know, we do a lot of odd things. But we do them once a year, once in 28 years. But here on a weekly basis, we take a day out of the week, and the world doesn't exist. It's wild. How do we do that? We do that because we live on a different plane than the world. We live on the plane of our relationship with God. And this relationship with God does not, so to speak, take us out of the world. Because it says you should fear your father and your mother. On the contrary, we recognize all the beauty and all the greatness in the world. But we recognize this greatness with a meaning, with a purpose. Going further down in the Parsha. Okay, I just want to summarize in the Kudah what I wanted to say is that when we start learning, you should be holy because I am holy. Everybody, we tend to say, oh well, the second, the Torah is talking about something mysterious, something that I cannot possibly relate to and understand. And I just want to point out that that's not the case. The Torah speaks to every individual. And a human being, and a Yid in particular, is absolutely capable. And not only capable, but he has an innate intellectual desire to see a real world, a meaningful world. And the only way the world becomes meaningful is when you recognize that it has a creator. And everything falls into place. Like I mentioned before, this is actually from Rebbe's Sikha. I mentioned before electricity, I mentioned before radio. Where does radio waves come in this world, this physical world? The answer is very simple. The world was created by God, who is one. And even though there is such huge variety in the world, and huge expanse spread out all over, millions of miles across, there is the unity of the world has not been affected at all. It's still one. And where do we see it? We see it in the fact, in radio. You can speak here, and you can be heard in the entire universe. They sent up these research satellites all the way to Mars and all that, and they will communicate with them. You're talking about millions of miles. It's all one thing. They took pictures of the planets and sent them down here. You would say, oh, it's a human miracle. No. It represents this one principle. But this is God's world. And no matter how expensive it is, how big it is, how separate things are, it's all one thing. And this is what the Torah says. You should be holy, which means you should live in and view your life a trifle above the physical. Not to be bound, not to be limited by the physical. Not to, we say in Avodah in Chassidus, it says that one of the principles of Avodah is iskafia. What does iskafia mean? Iskafia means that you have to control yourself. You have to subdue your natural tendency. And you ask yourself a question. How can you say this? How can you subdue your natural tendency? I'm a natural human being. I'm a natural entity. How can you subdue natural tendency? The answer is, you are not a natural being. You are a supernatural being. You are a godly being. and you do have the capability of going against your nature. And it can never be said that you are bound by your nature. And if I want this, then it's imperative that I get it. There's nothing in the world that compels a human being to act in a certain way. Nothing. But animals, yes, but not a human being. It's said that there's an expression, a Yiddish expression. He is crying like a beaver. It's an expression, crying like a beaver. What's a beaver? Beaver is an animal, a small animal, a beaver. And it has an interesting nature. Its nature is it has its nest, it has its home, whatever it's built on, and then it ventures out from this home to get food to go out. So when it ventures out from this home, its nature is that when it comes back, it has to come back the same path that it left. If it went out this way, it can't go back this way. It has to come back this way. It has to come back the way it left. This is its nature. Doesn't make sense, but that's its nature. So, if human beings want to capture this beaver, what do? They watch this beaver leave its nest, and then they put a trap on this path back. And the beaver comes, and he sees the trap, and he sees that he is never going to reach home. He's going to be trapped. And he stands in front of this trap, and he cries. And he has no choice. He cries, and cryingly he enters this trap. Because he's bound by this nature. A human being, there are, unfortunately, there are moments where a human being has, God forbid, loses his, what's called, he loses the ability to control himself. Being addicted, God forbid, this is a sickness. This is not a normal thing for a human being. But normally, a human being is able to stop himself, say, "Hey, wait a second. I'm not bound by these. These things cannot limit me. I guide myself by my intellect. What is right, this is what I'm able to do. Yes, I'm enticed, I'm drawn, and all, but it cannot be that I'm bound by it. This is what it means. You are holy because I'm holy. You live on a different plane. You have a different purpose. You're not bound by natural forces. There's further down in the Parsha, it speaks about the whole Parsha is Mamish. Parsha talks about holiness. All kind of mitzvahs that clearly define and show that we view the world from a godly perspective and go a holy world. When you plant a tree and the tree grows fruit, for 3 years, you're not to touch the fruit. It's called orla. You can't touch the fruit. The 4th year, then you can take the fruit and you have to take it to Yerushalayim and eat it in Yerushalayim, in the holy place. First, the 5th year fruit, that's the fruit that you're going to use normal. What's involved in this? What's wrong with the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year of fruit? It's an interesting thing. There's an explanation that the first, second, and third year, this represents the force of Olam Hazeh, the Olam Asiya, Yitzira, and Bria. Which means that when the fruit first begins to come out, the force that brings it out, this is a natural force of the world. Asiya, Yitzira, and Bria. And that fruit you're not to eat, this is klip. We don't eat fruit, natural fruit. We eat fruit that Hashem gives us. Like I mentioned many times, we spoke about the concept of a bracha. You remember that? We eat fruit directly from Hashem's hand, not from the tree. The first 3 years, this is natural fruit. And it's klipa, we don't eat it. The 4th year is already a higher, this is atzilus, but it's not good enough to be eaten everywhere. If you go to Yerushalayim and a holy place, you can eat it. The 5th year where there's the cognizance and recognition that this is entirely made by God, completely above nature, that's what you can eat. You can eat it everywhere. Because this, you already recognize that this is God's gift to you. It's an interesting thing that in the Pasha of the creation, where it says, Breishis Bor Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, it's in the Pasha of creation. Hashem created everything. And then He created Adam, the human being. And in creating, at that moment of creating Adam, Hashem said to Adam that I have created all these plants and all these trees and all these fruits, and I'm giving it to you to eat. What does that mean, I'm giving it to you? Adam could go out and find the fruit and eat it. But that's not the way it is. Adam was not left to go and scavenge around and find what to eat. Hashem handed it to him and said, this was created for you to eat. This is not just trees in the world. These are created intentionally for you to eat. And therefore, when he eats it from Hashem's hand, not from the natural tree. And this is what these 4 years represent. The first 3 years and the 4th year, this is kind of a tree growing on its own. The 5th year, this is already representative of a godly presence. And then that's what appropriate for human being to eat. Going further in the Pasha, which hits it, brings it all the way to home. The mitzvah of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is in this Pasha. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is such a mitzvah. Everybody knows what that means, right? Yeah. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, you must love your friend like yourself. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is a mitzvah that all the great commentators wonder and says, how is it possible? Chassidus discusses it. Chassidus first explains how this is possible. But from a legal perspective, how is it possible? How can a human being love another human being like himself? He is closest to himself. What does human being first thought, about himself? And yet the Torah said, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha." And how is this really possible to fulfill it 100% in reality? So the Alter Rebbe explains, and this is in Pashas, in this Pasha, Kdoshim, because we are enjoined, we are required, and we are given the ability to rise up from natural world and to live and to recognize the truth through our intellect, recognize the truth of existence. that the truth of existence is the godly presence. So then when you look at yourself, you're not just a natural presence. You're here because Hashem made you. Hashem made you aware of yourself. Just like Hashem made you aware of yourself, Hashem made you aware of your friend. It comes together. Because your own reality is real only because Hashem is real. Not because you are real. And if you're real because Hashem is real, so therefore your friend is equally real. So again, before I conclude, I want to mention it. This sounds very nice and lofty, but also fantastic. Just want to explain to you that this is the meaning of Torah. This is what Yiddishkeit is all about. And this is what we are, the effort that we put in our avodah, in his kafia, in his hapcha. We must be very careful, we must know where we're up to, and must go step by step. But we have to know that ultimately Torah is really capable of uplifting the human being to a real life, a meaningful life. To the extent where he would see the other person completely at the same moment when he sees himself. On par with himself. And we can readily recognize, readily see that with this force, with this view, this is unlimited view of reality. There's nothing that we cannot accomplish. Really nothing. Because a human being, a Yid, and everything that he needs to accomplish, there is this godly imperative that has to be done. It has to be accomplished. A kodesh only. And therefore there is nothing that cannot be accomplished. Even radio, you can hear something across from one part of the universe to the other. How can it be? It's there. This is there on the universal level, and it's there on the individual human level. And therefore, Hashem should help each one of us. We should open our minds. The Rebbe always says, open your eyes. Why do you have to open your eyes? Everybody has open eyes. But unfortunately, we have open eyes, but we are not allowing our eyes to see what they're able to see. We filter what we look at, what we see. Yeah, it's open eyes, but we filter. We don't try to look at the truth of the world. I want to see, what does it mean to me? What can I get out of it? But if we open our eyes and allow our eyes to tell us what they see, then we will see a beautiful world. And we will see that there's really no limit what we can accomplish. And no limit to the greatness and the goodness that we can do and that Hashem has put into the world. Hashem should help each one of us to open our eyes, open our minds, open our hearts, and be holy because God is holy.